Well, welcome to the 700 Club. If you're watching the national championship, I'm sure you're happy that the victor was Clemson. Yeah. Tiny Clemson beat the giant, and of course we're always in favor of David and versus Goliath. And, you know, Alabama went down in flames.
Yeah, I didn't watch the game, but I heard it was.
Oh, you missed it. Well,
I know.
The first half, Clemson was just, that quarterback set high school records. There's never been anybody that's had as many hundreds of thousands or hundreds of yards of offense as he has. They say he's a true freshman. The thing about Clemson, their assistant staff has been on scene for years. It is, whereas with Alabama, you know, Saban is so, he gets rated all the time because people want to hire his assistants. Sure. So the guys that are in charge are not quite as experienced, but it was an amazing display of defense on the part of Clemson and offense. It was remarkable. You didn't see any of it?
Should have watched.
Yeah, I thought you were a football fan.
Well, I'm a Green Bay fan.
Yeah,
I don't
Green
just
Bay.
watch
These are
football.
colleges, for heaven's sake. All right. Well, how's Green Bay doing then?
Not well.
All right. Well, the Bears, they got that poor kicker that went to boing, boing. I mean, he'll be known for the boing, boing, man. Anyhow, that's football. That's what's really important in the world. And yet, at the same time, our government is going into many more days of shutdown, and there's a standoff as to whether or not we're going to defend our southern border. The president's going to give a speech from the Oval Office tonight, and then he's going to go down to the border, and he's going to show some pictures. He's going straight to the American people to say, look, here is an emergency. Now, from a legal standpoint, as commander-in-chief, he has an absolute right to declare a national emergency, and this is not something that's subject to judicial review. People talk about, well, it'll be a court challenge. Courts, any court that would try to limit the power of the president in something like this would be completely out of line. It would be totally out of line for any judiciary to get involved. It's supposed to be dealt with Congress, and of course Congress would come out and say, well, we don't agree with it. But there's an item in the budget for military construction, barracks for troops on Army bases. But he can say, I'm really going to build some construction.
Reallocate that a little bit.
Reallocate it. And he has the privilege of doing that. But the Congress would try to stop him. But they're certainly not going to give him any money to fulfill those desires. So anyhow, the government shutdown continues, and Terry's got more.
Yeah, well, all of this comes as the shutdown enters its 18th day, and thousands of workers aren't going to be getting their paychecks on Friday. Abigail Robertson brings us the latest from Washington.
Millions will watch tonight as President Trump lays out his latest plan for border security and the money needed to pay for it. That audience will likely include many of the federal employees across the country whose bills are stacking up as they wait for their next paycheck.
I think I like doing this. I don't like doing it.
Like it or not, Democrats say the president's $5.5 billion demand has made pawns of federal workers.
We ought to have that argument on the substance and not be held hostage. 800,000 federal employees.
The acting White House chief of staff says the president's request is only one side of the coin.
Keep in mind, it takes two to tango in this town. I could just as easily say that it's the Democrats' refusal to give the necessary money for border security that is the cause of the shutdown.
If it's a wall Democrats don't want, President Trump is ready to call it something else.
If I have a steel wall, or you could call it a steel fence, but it'll be more powerful than any of the concrete walls that we're talking about. It's possible that it will look better.
If that doesn't work, the president could try another option.
I may declare a national emergency dependent on what's going to happen over the next few days.
Doing so would allow the president to tap into $10 billion of unused funds set aside for the Army Corps of Engineers.
He could technically go down that route, he would have to actually explain the statute that he's using the emergency for.
Although the National Emergencies Act has been on the book for more than 4 decades, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody says the president would still need congressional buy-in.
Here's a bit of the rub. Congress, if they didn't want him to invoke this national emergency, would be able to overturn it, basically say, no, Mr. President, you can't do it, if you can pass a joint resolution in both the House and the Senate. That means the language has to be the same in the Democrat House and the Republican Senate, and good luck with that.
On Monday's Faith Nation program, Indiana Republican Senator Mike Braun said the president would likely find support from that side of the aisle.
If he declared a national emergency and thought it needed to be done in that fashion, most of us would be for it, because it looks like the other side is doing everything it can to do nothing.
There's still the human side to all of this back and forth.
Our mortgage, our gas, electric, trash, water bills.
3 weeks in, workers like Marilyn Carrothers are resorting to paying bills with credit cards.
Creditors may make an extension, but if you go past that extension, it's going to affect your credit.
Carrothers is left wondering who will pay the interest fees if she doesn't get a paycheck.
We want to go back to work. We need to go back to work because we have bills to pay.
President Trump says he can relate to the people missing paychecks, but he believes they will make adjustments.
Many of those people that won't be receiving a paycheck, many of those people agree 100% with what I'm doing.
In Congress, some 40 lawmakers requested their salaries be withheld during the shutdown.
I hope that we can continue to fight for additional border security dollars. That's what we need to do. But I don't think shutting down the government's the right way to do it.
Vulnerable Republican senators like Cory Gardner are starting to split from party leadership, calling for the government to reopen, with or without funding for the border wall. The biggest question remains, will either side give, or might the president act on his own, which could lead to bigger fights down the road? While most federal employees will receive back pay once the government reopens, some lower-paid contract employees, such as janitors, food, and security service workers, may never see any compensation from their lost paychecks. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. It's a sad situation. You know, a house divided against itself cannot stand. A kingdom divided against itself can't stand. This is a little petty nonsense, a little bit of money, but now the president has finally gotten it a little bit broader. He says, okay, I need money for judges. Those judges have got to try these cases. We don't have enough of them. Okay. I need more guards at the border, and that's okay. I've got to have some housing for these detainees as they come across, and I'm going to try to process all this. Now that he's got a specific budget for this, that, and the other, and that'll work. And you take that away from all this wall thing, and you say, look, we've got to do some security on our border. We cannot have drug addicts. We cannot have gang members. We cannot have terrorists from the Middle East coming across our border. Well, that's fine. But he's asking for, if you break it down into these things, then how in the world is Congress going to say no? And I think the president is going to lay that case out. But if you're like me, I think it's so small in relation to the multi-trillion-dollar budget we've got in this country. And a few $1 billion, there's so many more important things we could spend the money on. Well, you can see the president's address at 9 p.m. tonight on the CBN News channel. You can find out where you can see the news channel in your city. Go to cbnnews.com. And in other news, Turkey's President Erdogan snubbed U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton today. John Jessup has more on that.
That's right, Pat. Bolton, seeking assurances Turkey won't attack the Kurds after the U.S. pullout from Syria, had planned to meet with Erdogan today in Ankara. But the Turkish president told American officials he had other commitments. As CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports, Bolton's mission is something Erdogan just doesn't want to commit to.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan publicly blasted U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton in front of the parliament.
It's not possible for us to accept, to swallow the message John Bolton gave from Israel.
Bolton is visiting the region to assure allies that the U.S. is not abandoning them. While visiting Jerusalem, he said defending Israel and other allies who fought against ISIS was guaranteed. He wanted assurances from Turkey that they would not harm the Kurds.
John Bolton has made a very serious mistake. Whoever thinks like this is also mistaken. We can't make any concessions in this regard, and those involved in a terror corridor will receive the necessary punishment.
On CBN's Faith Nation program, Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane said everyone is vying for power.
Everyone is jockeying for position in Syria at this time because the war is winding down. ISIS has pretty much been defeated, so have other militant groups.
Initially, President Trump said he would pull 2,000 U.S. troops out of Syria within 30 days. But after strong objection from Middle East allies and others, he's backed down. We will be leaving at a proper pace while at the same time continuing to fight ISIS and doing all else that is prudent and necessary. But Lane said there's a lot of concern over leaving Turkey in charge.
The Kurds are wondering, are you a reliable ally, United States, if you withdraw these troops and the training that we've received, that buffer, that help that we've received over time in the last couple of years? Where are we going to be? And where are the Christians going to be?
But senior Kurdish official Badran Jia Kurd said the Kurds haven't heard directly from the U.S., only through the media.
We're waiting for clarification from the U.S. administration regarding these statements. This shows that the U.S. has a plan in this direction, but it's not clear to us. But now there is a reality that Bolton acknowledged that Turkey is killing the Kurds and are annihilating them, and Bolton wants guarantees.
Turkey has fought the Kurds for decades. Erdogan said it's a lie that Turkey would target the Kurds in Syria, but said the military preparations to attack what he calls Kurdish terror groups are nearly complete. It's not clear how Erdogan's declaration will affect the pullout, but for now it appears that U.S. troops aren't going anywhere. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something that would be so simple for the president can do. A few years ago, there was a Lord Balfour who made a declaration called the Balfour Declaration, said it is in His Majesty's government's opinion that there should be a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. That was the... Now, there are 36 million Kurds, 36 million. They occupy northern Iraq, they occupy northern Syria, and of course there's some of them in southern Turkey. Now, the ones that are in northern Iraq and in Syria already have formed a government. It is called Kurdistan. Now, all Trump has got to do is say, we recognize the government of Kurdistan as the legitimate home of the 36 million Kurdish people. It's the only people group in the world of that size that doesn't have its own country. Now, it would be so easy to do. Then he can say, I'm directing my Secretary of Defense to send the appropriate weapons to those Kurds to defend themselves. These Peshmerga have worked beside us in fighting all the way up and down the line from Saddam Hussein on. Now, there's one group called the PPK that are Marxist terrorists. We don't need to help them, and the Turks don't like them. We don't like them, so that's the end of them. But the main Turkish group, if there was a Trump declaration that we, as the United States, want to declare a homeland for the Kurds. Now, he wouldn't have to have Senate approval. He wouldn't have to fight it with anybody. It was something, a stroke of the pen, he could do it. And suddenly you've got 36 million people with a homeland. And then he has a buffer against ISIS. He has a buffer against the encroachment of the Russians. He's got a buffer against the growth of that terrible... Well, the people in Damascus who've been laying waste to Syria. And he has a buffer against the Iranians coming in to take over Iraq. I mean, it's so simple. But he's got to do it. It would be just a stroke of the pen he could do it. We're not talking about, he doesn't have to get congressional approval. He doesn't have to sign a treaty. Don't make it a treaty, just make it a declaration. Suddenly there is a Trump declaration, like the Balfour Declaration, and he would then be acclaimed as a hero through the whole world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's the answer. But otherwise, those Kurds are going to be decimated. If we walk out of there, the Turks will just move in and massacre these wonderful people who want to be friendly, democratic with the United States. I mean, they want a representative form of government. Their capital of Erbil is a model of order and democracy. It's a wonderful people. Oh, we just pray. You all pray about that one. Now, John, we've got some more things about the businesses of our America. What you got?
That's right. In financial news, Amazon has overtaken Microsoft to become the world's most valuable publicly traded company. On Monday, Amazon shares went up 3%, giving the online retailer a market value of $797 billion. Microsoft couldn't keep up, increasing only by 1 percentage point, leaving it in second place at $784 billion. Well, a teen trafficking victim serving a life sentence for murder is now looking forward to a life of freedom. On Monday, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam granted clemency to 30-year-old Cyntoia Brown. Now she's crediting the Lord for giving her, quote, his saving grace and a second chance. Brown's lawyers say she was forced into the sex trade when she was only 16. That's when this man, Johnny Allen, bought her for sex. She said she feared for her life and shot him. She was sentenced to at least 51 years in prison. By many accounts, Brown made changes in prison, deciding to become a devoted Christian, and is now close to finishing her bachelor's degree from Lipscomb, a Christian university. At a hearing in May, she explained.
It was so necessary to change. It wasn't so much of a choice, but I had to.
Cyntoia's transformation is nothing short of a miracle. To watch her go from where she was to where she is the most amazing thing.
Anti-trafficking groups like Exodus Cry, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and Shared Hope all applauded the governor's move, and Southern Baptist leader Russell Moore called Brown's clemency an important development. Brown is expected to be released from prison in August after serving 15 years behind bars. Well, Clemson shocked #1 Alabama last night, rolling over the Crimson Tide by a score of 44-16 to win the NCAA College Football National Championship. Alabama was favored to win, but Clemson's defense stopped the high-scoring Tide and even scored the game's first touchdown with an interception return. #2 Clemson had a commanding 31-16 lead by the half, and the Tide was never able to come back. Clemson is the first team to win the college football playoffs with a 15-0 record. And a hearty congratulations to both teams. Pat, back to you.
And once again, we congratulate Dabo Swinney. You know, he's got a funny name. When he was a boy, the people he was growing up with in South Carolina said he called him Daboy. Daboy. Yes. And that's where he got the name Dabo.
You're going to remember that.
Yeah, Daboy. So anyhow, he's a very humble man. Nice guy. Everybody likes him. And congratulations to Clemson.
Absolutely.